Me and Sima are so excited about this particular episode. And yeah, maybe you can tell us what we're going to talk about, Sima.
We're kind of calling this one the God episode because in both of our lives and on both of our spiritual journeys, we've been so connected to God. And we've realized that in this year, for both of us, our relationship to God has expanded and strengthened. And we continue to have this deeper craving and connection to God. And then we've realized just with everything going on around the world and people that we even see around us and clients, there's a disconnection from God. And I think that's what so many people are craving. And I also think there's a disconnection from God because people associate it with religion and they've had maybe negative experiences with religion. And so it's created this disconnect from God, and I think there is a huge awakening to become closer to it. And much like every other topic we talk about here, it's really about just normalizing it and not making it something woo-woo or something so religious. Because I think when we tell people we have a relationship to God, they're like, "You must be so religious," and I'm like, "No." Like not religious at all, but I have a very strong and beautiful relationship to God that continues to grow. And that's really what we want to speak about today, to kind of like expand people's minds and hearts of what it means to have a relationship to God. And it's really not about religion, it's just being connected to this energy.
It's maybe not going to be what you think, but it's going to be exactly what you need to hear. You're called into this space for a reason. And yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have resistance with the word God. And so a lot of times when I'm working with clients, I'll tell them call it spirit, call it source, call it universe, call it what you want to call it that makes you feel good with working with the energy. But I realize that on my own journey, like it all leads to God. At the end of the day, it is God. So I use the word God. Even in my sessions with clients, I use the word God, and I see some people like flinch, and it's almost like, but I thought you're spiritual. Why are you saying God? And I feel like the essence of God was robbed from us through man and control and that stuff.
This talk of God and connecting with God and having a relationship with God, we are sort of taught that there's only one route towards that, and that is that route of religion. And so many people feel that disconnection because of the connotations
Mm-hmm.
around what religion represents. And something I found on my own journey within this and, towards strengthening my
Yeah.
relationship with God is actually like the teachings, and religion has kind of diluted the message a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. I find, and this is my experience, having a
Mm-hmm.
relationship with God does not mean that I'm restricted. It does not mean I can't do things. It's more about the faith that it brings.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I think one thing that religion has done for so many people, like myself included, it almost felt like if I have a relationship with God, I then am going to be restricted in so many things. And I think that's why I always had this push against it. And I think that's what religion has done. It's created these restrictions that you almost don't have like this autonomy over your own experience because, but God says no. And I'll have to say, when I got really sick a few years ago, I didn't recognize it back then, but I recognize it looking back now. It was always about me waking up and having a connection to God because I had this conversation with someone a few weeks ago and it really opened my eyes to like what really connected me to realize, hold on a second, like there is a God, this energy does exist. Being Jewish, I was always raised that as a Jew, you keep kosher. So you eat certain types of meat, you don't eat shellfish, you don't eat pork, you don't mix dairy with meat, you have to put hours apart. And it's like, that's how you're a good Jew because that's how God wants it. And, growing up and then growing up in America, like I see all these other kids eating pork and mixing dairy with meat and stuff. And but then Judaism teaches you there's only one God. And I'm like, why am I restricted? Why am I, as a Jew, restricted from enjoying my life and having this freedom, but them, as like the Catholic or the Christian, could eat the pepperoni pizza at the birthday party and nothing happens? And it wasn't until I got sick and I was having this relationship to God where I realized God was never about these restrictions. God was never about these limitations. God was about having faith in an energy that's bigger than all of us, that's always here to provide more, that's always here to guide us to more and bigger. And someone asked me, they're like, Sima, why don't you keep kosher as a Jew if you're so connected to God? And I said, because my relationship to God doesn't come with a list of rules and regulations and how I must act as a person with these like religious boundaries. I'm like, that's not God. Keeping kosher doesn't make me a woman of God. Having faith, doing good in the world, choosing to operate from love and always love, choosing forgiveness, choosing accountability, choosing to turn to God, that's what makes me a woman of God. I don't need to fast on Yom Kippur to atone my sins or all of that, or keep Passover or keep kosher in order to be a woman of God. Those are technicalities. And that's where I realized there has been this huge shift for me from a person of God separated from religion. You can have faith, but faith doesn't mean religion. It doesn't mean Christianity. It doesn't mean Judaism. It doesn't mean Islam. It doesn't mean any of these things.
Right.
I respect everyone and how they choose to practice their religion, because some people really do find a beautiful relationship to God through religion. Like that also
Mm,
exists. And again, everyone's soul is on a different timeline here, is here for a different reason. And just there's different levels. So some people are religious and they're just some of the most beautiful souls on earth, and they have a beautiful relationship with religion. The boundaries, or let's say the quote unquote restrictions that come with religion, just really work for them. And that's totally fine. So if someone's listening to this, and actually I don't think really religious people would be listening to this anyways, but it's all about honor and respecting everyone for how they are. But I just think for a big chunk of the world who is going through an awakening in this timeline, because Earth is having this massive awakening, what we call this Christ consciousness that's awakening through everyone. It is, and people are craving God and people are craving something bigger.
I feel like I've always kind of had this knowing that there's something bigger than myself. I shared with you a few days ago that when I was in high school, I remember being in religion
Hmm.
class. And it was one of those classes that, nobody really liked. It was, you had like the teacher was like, an old teacher and she was like kind of mean and, nobody really liked that class. And I remember one day sitting in the class and the teacher says, just out of
Hmm.
curiosity, who in here believes in God? And I remember like shooting my hand up and then all of a sudden having this urge to look around me and realizing I was the only person in the class to have my hand up and feeling kind of like really surprised. I was really surprised. And
Hmm.
I think that for me, I look back on that moment so much
Yeah.
because it feels like a core memory, to me that this happened. Nobody said anything. It wasn't, there was no sort of yeah, like anyone saying anything to me or anything like that, but it felt like I was like standing in my truth, actually. And so I think back to that moment when I've had, throughout my adult life where
Yeah.
I've had these
Yeah.
callings to, you know, connect deeper with God, to prayer, to, yeah, to that trust. Because for me, that's what it's really given to me. And I think the more that I moved into spirituality, the more I moved into understanding myself, understanding what I want, the more I moved into my own inner truth, the more connected I became to God, because
Hmm.
that has been the almost like the ultimate form of trust for me when there's
Yeah.
things that I feel like a challenge to me, or there's so many things, like the timeline of when we want certain things to happen, or certain things that we're worried about, we're calling in. It's like just giving it to God. It just it creates so much relief and surrender inside
Yeah. I want to say this
Mm,
because you've mentioned this a few times, and like even when we spoke, you said it, like your relationship to God has a lot to do with trust. And while I understand that both logically and physically in my body, I know what that trust and that surrender feels like. But to the average person who doesn't have a relationship with God, how would you simplify that trust? Or how do you start to explain where
mm,
that trust even came
yeah,
from?
great question.
Because it's easy to say trust this, but then people are like,
I
how?
think it did come from learning to trust myself first and foremost. And so I think when any of us go on these awakening journeys where we're starting to get in
Hmm.
tune with what we actually want, who we actually are, what we're about, when we do that, we start to unravel trust. We start to, again, when we start trusting our intuition, our intuition is that self-trust, and for me, that has been sort of that invisible thread towards surrendering to the universe, to the bigger picture, to God, and I think a lot of us actually do already leave that trust to God, but we, as you mentioned before, we call it something different. We say, oh, trust the universe, or the universe has your back, or and really we're surrendering to God.
Yeah.
And I know for
Yeah.
myself, and I know
Yeah.
so many other people who have walked a similar journey as I have, where it's been that journey of awakening, getting to know yourself, unraveling your layers. It all sort of leads to God.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's one thing we spoke about a few days ago. And I said, with every single person I've seen having a spiritual awakening outside
Yeah.
of like religion and not turning to religion, all roads at the
Mm.
end lead to God and they lead to Jesus. It always leads to Jesus. And you're right back there and you're like, wow, well, wait a second. There has to be some beautiful and massive truth to a lot of his teachings, to everything we've learned about Jesus. And then for me, it's really expanded my consciousness and expanded my experience with life and God. And I don't see Jesus as God. I think there's a frequency of God as
Yeah.
God. And then Jesus was like the greatest human reflection of that for us. And so then in connecting with Jesus and using Jesus as our protector and as our source and our guidance and calling upon that, you build this really beautiful connection. And I will tell people here, especially those who like work very much in the spiritual realm like I do, I've learned and I've noticed there's a very big importance of using the term God and using the word Jesus in your work, because you're working with portals, you're working with energies, you're working in other dimensions. There's a lot of different energies that want to come through and manipulate you, that are maybe low vibrational energies. I've seen in my work, when I call upon God to be my protector, when I call upon Jesus to be the messenger, to guide the messages through me, there's a certain level of protection there for me. The messages that come through are all divinely guided. It's like you're preaching sometimes in those moments, but you're preaching literally from God. And so that's when I realized using these terms like God and Jesus are actually really, really important. And they're very sacred and they're very divine. And one thing for me, I had one of those experiences with God that was more so like God is punishing. And I went to Hebrew school when I was younger, and there's all these like limitations and rules and stuff when it comes to God. But much like many other people in other religions, I always felt like if you make this mistake, God's going to punish you. And then like you take your punishment, and then he forgives you. And I remember that never like really sat right with me, and that never felt good. And it was when I was like at my rock bottom and I came across this book, and in the first few pages, as the author's talking about God, she's like, I want people to remember that God doesn't punish you. Humans do. And that line hit me like a ton of bricks, because I was like, this is where religion took me away from God, because they told me God would punish me if I didn't follow these certain rules. And so, therefore, because you believe that, you do something you think you're not, AKA, supposed to. And then what we do is we're creating the punishment for ourselves because we're expecting God to punish us. And in that, when I read that and it like it touched my soul, every single cell in my body like started dancing because it felt like truth. And she said, God doesn't punish. God already knows when you're coming into this dimension with free will and all of these different temptations and all of these different decisions you can make. He knows the decision you're making before you make it. So if you're going down, let's say, a not right path, he's already forgiven you for the decision that you're about to make. Your job is to forgive yourself. Your job is to grow from that. That's what God, our Father, wants from us. That's it. It's not about not making mistakes. It's not about being perfect. It's not even about fearing Him. I think that's one of the things I dislike the most when I hear God and people say, I'm a God-fearing person. And I'm like, God doesn't want you to fear Him. And because you fear, then you do the right things. God wants you to love and love yourself. And because you love God and you feel the love of God in your life, then you do the right things. You respect yourself, you respect others because you love God, not fear God.
All religion and all, teachers in religion, it's going to be different, but I almost feel like it's kind of like, I call it Chinese whispers, but I know you call it telephone. It's like a game of telephone, you know? And so over time, it makes sense that messages can be diluted, they can sort of, come away from the source of what they are. And something I think that is really, really beautiful that is
Yeah.
happening right now is a lot of people are drawn back to the scripture, are drawn back to, the original text. They're drawn into reading the Bible and not just listening
Yeah.
what other people are talking about when it comes to religion and when it comes to connecting with God. They're going to the source. And I think that is, and when you sort of start to read the source or connect
Yeah.
with the Bible or however way you feel called, right? You start to realize that actually God wants you to be a creator. God wants to shower you in prosperity. There is no like,
Hmm.
I always had this sort of thing in my head that, this vision that Jesus,
Yes.
was sort of like poor and walked the earth in like a loincloth. And I read something a couple of weeks ago and it was like, Jesus was a millionaire. He was like, he had an accountant, people were waiting for him to give up his robes because they were the most luxurious kind of robes, and so that was sort of my disconnect. It was like, oh, like, you can't be abundant, you can't have this beautiful life if you're connected to God, when actually it's the opposite.
I really wonder where these texts, where these definitions were really misconstrued and like who intentionally changed them to for what reason. Because I think what so many people in religion realize, like, there's a level of control here. and and I think so many people like myself have been so called to like reading the Bible. Like I was like, you know what, I want to read the Bible. The Old Testament is the Torah, so I'll be reading the Torah in the process. And then you read the rest of the story with discernment, with translating the scriptures in the way that you feel is true versus a literally a translation of it that feels disconnected from God, because I feel like that's where every religion goes wrong. Is how was that scripture translated? And if it's being translated in a way, and I think this is where you learn discernment, you learn that in your body is your soul and you could feel truth and you can translate truth. This is where you know, am I translating this properly or is this being translated in a way that's not truth? Because my body will be able to discern the truth. And I'm actually so excited to read all of this from like the Old Testament, starting from that, because the way that I will then translate it, or even as I
Yeah,
seek maybe
exactly.
teachers to translate some of the scriptures for me, I'll know truth because I'll know it from within. So I want to really simplify this for people because I think I get a lot of people who tell me, well, how do I trust God? Because I'm unhealthy, I'm unmarried, my business won't take off, I feel miserable, I'm unhappy. How do I trust God? God's not doing anything with my life. I keep asking and God doesn't do anything for me. How would you respond to someone who's, let's say, at that point of their journey, who's almost like, I've given up on God because I think God's given up on me?
You know, I think sometimes when it comes to challenges coming up in our life and, it's seeming like God is not there, like there's no support, you've got no trust in your life. I sometimes really believe that that's the preparation.
Mhm.
He's right next to you. But it's
I
almost
think that's
like,
where
yeah,
God is
it's
there
like
the
it's
most.
when God is there the most because he's
Mhm.
preparing you for
Mhm.
those things that you're calling in. And it comes back to, the previous podcast we had when we're talking about manifestation and creating the life that you want. There's going to be like the challenges come up, the things come up that are
Mhm.
limiting you and blocking you from that. And sometimes, if you are calling in this beautiful life that you want with all this prosperity and you're calling in the right person, God has to remove everything that is not that, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And God is preparing you for the things that you want. And it's not just for you to have those things. God could give you the things that you wanted, but you would not be disciplined enough to maintain it. You would not be grounded enough to honor and respect it, and then you would lose it. And so if God is literally your parent, and a good parent teaches you how to receive things, teaches you how to maintain things. And again, and I think this is the biggest thing for people, God is not punishing you, nor is God abandoning you. Sometimes when you're not, sometimes, every time when you're at that rock bottom, God didn't even put you in that rock bottom. It's your free will of choices that brought you to that point, and it's okay. There's no judgment. But that is where God is like, are you going to help? Are you going to let me help you now? And the help, first and foremost, I've recognized, comes from our mindset just to accept, maybe, just maybe, this terrible situation in my life is actually designed to bring goodness through me.
Everything that comes your way is for you. It's not against you, you know?
Yes, yes, exactly. Exactly. I think that's where people get so deterred. Well, if God wants to do good for me, then why is God doing this? And it's like everything is not rainbows and butterflies. There's lessons, there's discipline, there's
Uh-huh.
bumps in the road. Like, have you ever heard that saying, straight roads don't create skilled drivers? It's the same thing with life. People think, okay, well, when I walk with God, it has to be a straight road and everything's going to go perfect. But then it's like you have no skill, you have no faith, you have no understanding. How are you going to maintain all of the things that life is going to kind of throw at you and bring towards you? Because we are here to experience so many things in this realm and in this dimension. And God is literally just teaching you how to do it. And so when you're in these obstacles and these ups and downs, God is literally holding your hand. And the first way to really even connect to that energy is by truly realizing this frequency of God that has created our earth is here to only bring us good. So, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstance, this is for your greatest and highest good. And as far away as it looks like you're so far away from your dream life, it's actually about understanding this is the foundation on which you are going to build yourself up to have that dream life. I think so many people see their situations that they're in of, because I'm in this situation, then I can't be this person, then I can't feel like this, then I can't have that. And I'm like, no, it's opposite. Because you're in this situation, you are going to have every single one of those things and be every single thing you want to be. This rock bottom is a sign that you have the opportunity. God is saying it's your turn. But we have to change our mindset. We have to change our interaction. We have to know there's so much goodness in the world, and God only wants more good for us. So no matter what happens, God only wants more. We're not going to look at it as a negative. We're going to look at it as a divine intervention. And God is somehow strengthening me here, and God will always give me more because that's how God works. And when you even read scriptures about Jesus, it's all about you just need to have faith in him. And I saw something on Instagram the other day because, the algorithm really starts to show you more of the things you talk about, which I love and I appreciate. Instagram has become.
I just want to say one thing on that as well. I always say your life is like an Instagram algorithm as well. So the more attention you give and the more energy you give to certain mindsets, to certain thoughts, to certain
Yeah.
environments, they're going to show up more in your life.
A beautiful analogy because
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And you know how some people go on Instagram? Instagram's a dark
Yeah.
place. It's so bad. I'm like, Instagram's the best place. Like, I have the best followers that I get to interact with. And then my algorithm is showing me things about love, about divine love, about sisterhood, and about God.
Yeah. But also just we're like kind of going into Instagram a little bit, but I love it. But I was thinking about this yesterday as well, because now you can see what your friends like on Instagram Reels, right? So, and I was thinking about it and I was like, it means that me and you are on the exact same frequency in life and on Instagram because every single reel that I go past, you've liked it. I will like I want to like this, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
go see Seema's liked it as well.
I love that. There was this guy, I don't think he was a
Yeah.
pastor, but he was speaking to a group of incarcerated men. And I love that they bring God and Jesus to incarcerated people to have that be an opportunity for them to really start fresh. But one of them had asked him, "Well, how do I have faith?" And he gave a very beautiful answer. And I wish I knew who it was so I can give credit to him because I just like scrolled past it. But he's like, truth
Wow.
is, you already have faith. It's just what are you giving your faith to? And he goes, if you think of it every single day, you have faith that when you go and you push that button for the elevator is taking you down. You have no idea how it works. You just know it will. When you go and you get in your car and you turn the key or push the button to start it, it starts. You have faith. And he's like, that's faith. You have faith that this thing will work. You have no idea how it's working. You just know it will. And so he's like, you already have faith. It's just about putting your faith in the right places. And I was like, that hit me so hard because I was like, that's a beautiful line that he gave. But here's the thing with our world. When we have like this saying, which I dislike, it's too good to be true. Our faith, what has happened to humanity, and when people are very unawakened, your faith is actually in that frequency. You have more faith that bad things will happen and things are going to be taken away from you versus having faith that only good things are happening in your life. So you're always having faith. It's just we have been a little manipulated
We were
into
talking about
what
this
we
a few days
believe.
ago about how actually having trust and
Mm-hmm.
faith in what is above creates a lot of discernment in your life as well, because it allows you to see again, like, okay, where am I putting my faith then? Because energy has to go
Yes,
somewhere,
yes.
and if we always have faith, it's going somewhere. And, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, and a lot of the clients that I work with and I talk to, it can be this, they're
Yes.
conditioned as to believe that things that come natural to them are no good, or the ways that they want to move in their life can't happen. These are the conditions that we face every day in society. And for me, this is also having that faith over that fear. So, and this is not to say that I don't get fearful sometimes, that challenges don't present themselves, that I don't feel
Yeah.
worried or scared or whatever. I do, but I
Mhm.
discern in that moment. I catch myself. I
Right.
think catching yourself in moments is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. So I catch myself in that moment and I say, faith over fear.
Exactly.
I'm not choosing to channel my energy into the fear. I want to channel it into faith. And giving that up to God
Yeah.
is sometimes the best way that I can do that. Because if I am feeling overwhelmed, because I'm human, I get overwhelmed, I get emotional. If I'm feeling
Yeah.
those things, there's someone I can give it to.
Right. Right. Yeah. And when we give something to God and we have the faith that God's going to figure it out for us, we let go of that control. And in the beginning, of course, it's uncomfortable. When you haven't lived your life that way, it becomes scary and your body's like, am I going to survive? But truth is, if we are holding on and we are trying to control, we're trying to control through our logical mind. So we only know a certain way to create an outcome. Whereas God has a million and one ways to get you to that outcome. So when we surrender and say, you know what, I don't know how to do this, but I know that this is where I want to go and this is what I want to create, the how is not up to me. It lifts so much pressure, so much weight off of your shoulders because when you give it to God, then you start to see when things come up, life does happen. Then you're not looking at, oh, why is this happening now? You're like, oh, why is this happening for me now? Because God is using this to get me there. And so then it's like the way we interact and relate to life's experiences changes. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm noticing this is like a theme in every single episode. It's not about what happens in life. It's about how you're interacting with the thing that's happening. It's not that, like you said, it's not that we don't fear. I have a lot of fears that come up for me in life, but in that moment, I pause and I look at
Mhm.
the fear and I say, wait a second. Whenever I'm fearing something is just because I don't know what's going on. That's where the frequency of fear comes from. You just don't know. And so I'm going to give the fear to God and say, God, teach me this, navigate me through this, support me through this. And then I know that it will. And the importance of this and the importance of choosing faith and the foundation of it is really knowing that this frequency of God that exists for every single one of us is here to bring goodness, not the opposite, goodness. And when you know that, then when you choose, okay, I'm going to have faith, there's a reason why they call it train of thought. Because when you have one thought, it's exactly what you said. Then the next thought is going to show up that matches the frequency of this first thought. So then the second thought is also a thought of faith, a thought of peace, a thought of confidence, a thought of security. Then the thought that comes after that has to match this vibration, but bigger and bigger. This is why you see people that start getting negative and then in a few years they're like completely depressed because it's the thought process, that train of thought, it keeps going in that direction. So when you choose, and this is everybody can literally change their life in this second, in this moment, just by deciding in this moment, I choose to believe that God is good and God only wants my goodness. And that's it. That's what I'm going to believe. Because from that belief, the next thing is, well, wait a second. If this is happening, let's just say someone's dealing with a chronic illness. If I'm dealing with this chronic illness, instead of victimizing and feeling sad and feeling depressed, it's, well, wait a second. God is doing this for my goodness, for my greatest good, and health is my birthright. So God's going to get me through this. And then the next thought comes, and the next thought comes, all of which are going down this path. And that is how you open yourself up for the answers, for the miracles, so that the abundance can just shower on you because we are designed for abundance. We have portals of abundance with health, with love, with finances, with friendship, with community. We have portals of that connected to us to pour into us. So it's not that, oh, I don't have abundance in this way. It's that through my thoughts and what I believe, I'm blocking this.
That frequency of what you want to bring in, and anything that you want to bring in is God given. Everything. God
Yeah.
plants a seed for a reason, and you are supposed to respond to that seed and start trusting yourself to move towards that. But knowing that as well, for me, it's like this support that I have from God in places I
Yeah.
cannot see, and it's just this trust that there's so many areas, there's so many ways
Yeah.
that God is clearing the path. We speak about it because we are both, we're ready to meet our husbands. We're ready to
Yeah.
get married and have a deep, fulfilling relationship. with another man, with a man.
Well, another man, because the first man is God. So this is a covenant between the three of us.
In some way, God is preparing that man for me too. That man is praying for me too. That man is getting ready for me too. And
Yeah.
there's this
Yes.
there's just this, when you have that trust in what you cannot see, you can start to
Yeah.
see that there's things happening behind the scenes. Eventually you start to see that and you go, "Oh my God, I didn't
Hmm.
that's so," it's like a miracle, right?
Yeah. It's very true, and that's how it works. And I think, for the people that feel like the most stuck in their journey right now, I think I would say to those people that this is just the beginning of your journey with God. And then in the beginning, you might not see anything. You just feel like, I'm having faith, but I'm not seeing it. Have faith. Sometimes it's a slow start. Like when and I talk about this a lot because I think God gave me so much in my chronic illness, so much in that. And I talk about it a lot because I realize it taught me about how God works. It taught me patience. I was sick for 5 years before we found out what it was. And even in that, I realized the time that it took, it was just God working through me. God, God preparing me for the answer so that I could receive it, so that I could use the opportunity as a way for growth. And so for people that feel like, well, I'm having faith, but nothing's happening, don't don't deter on your faith. Don't give up on your faith. In the times that you feel like it's pitch black and I don't see anything and I don't see God showing up, lean even deeper into your faith. Because there's certain things where it's like instantly you see God in that moment, and then there's certain things that you don't see. But in those things, it's keep your faith, because then you're amplifying that energy. Keep your connection to God. Know that God is doing things for you. You just can't see it. It's happening behind the scenes. God is that person that's talking about you at tables that you're not even there, but he's talking you up and he's there. And, God is doing the most behind the scenes. So just because you don't see it, don't lose your faith in it. And just because things start looking like they're getting messier in life, don't lose your faith in it, because like Abby said, it's going to crumble the foundation
Yeah.
that's shaky. It's going to take away everything that cannot be there. Don't lose your faith. And I think that's the biggest thing here with God, and even understanding your relationship to God. It's literally it's going to test you in many ways to have faith, to even be like, oh my God, God really has been here this whole time. And then it's so beautiful, and then you lean into it. And then I will also say this to people: just because you then have discovered God and the frequency of it, it doesn't mean there aren't moments or aspects of your life where you're like, shit, I've been trying to do this on my own for like a year. I forgot to give it to God. Like there are aspects of my life that I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, I've been controlling this. I forgot to just give this to God and let God guide me in this. And that's where there's a deeper relationship and a deeper connection. I'll give an example. Last year, I got eczema on my fingers, and I had never had eczema before. So I didn't know it was eczema. I didn't know what eczema looks like or feels like. And it was between two of my fingers. And then, like, no matter what ointment I'd put on it, it wasn't getting better. So, like, after a couple months, I go to dermatologist because my brain goes to the worst places. I'm like, I must have some sort of wild disease. I go to the dermatologist. She looks at it, and in 2 seconds, she's like, it's this type of eczema. And I'm like, well, I've tried steroids, I've tried antibiotics, I've tried antifungals, I've tried everything over the counter. And I'm a very holistic type person, so I tried all the holistic things too. I was like, nothing's worked. And it had spread over my entire left hand, and it was going to my right hand. And it was like, anybody who's had eczema knows how wild and like uncomfortable, and it's just like cracked and flaky. And I was like, it's just spreading. So the dermatologist gives me another prescription. I start using those things, but I'm just like, it doesn't feel right. It's not even working. And so this was like 6 months into this. I remember
Mhm.
one day I like sit down and I was like, I've been trying
Mhm.
to figure this out logically. I've done every logical thing. And I sat down and I'm like, let me give it to God. And I kid you not, Abby, I sat and I meditated and I said, God, give me the answer. I give this to you. This is not mine. I don't think this was ever meant to be mine. And so as I sat there, I just started to see a vision of Jesus in my head. Like my eyes were closed, I was meditating. I saw Jesus walking through my kitchen, picking up a bottle of olive oil that I had in my pantry. And mind you, I have a lot of different types of oils there. And he said, Seema, this is anointed, use this. And then that was it. And then it went away. And I remember opening my eyes and being like, yeah, right, that's going to work. My logic. But then in my gut, I was like, all you have to do is have faith. That's it. And so I was like, and it felt foreign to my body to have that faith, but I'm like, no, I'm gonna have faith because you know what? I've tried everything else. And it's been like 6 months of this and it's spreading to both hands. So I go, I get that oil, and I said, thank you, God, for blessing this. And this is gonna be an anointed oil now. I'm not gonna use this for cooking anymore or anything. And Abby, I started using the olive oil on my hands. I kid you not, within 2 days, it was all gone.
Oh my God.
It was all gone. The only thing that was left is where it had initially happened. It had just had cracked so much that I just needed to apply a little bit of olive oil between my two fingers for like another week or two, something like that. All gone, and it never came back.
Hmm. This is faith. This is the power of faith. It's the
This,
power of what you believe to be true
yeah.
being true, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
And it is,
So,
it's what we've all been taught. Our mind creates our reality, and it does. And what we believe in creates for us. But I've seen along my spiritual journey that when I put my faith in God, when I put my faith in Jesus, that's even more solid and that's even more secure. And when I ask for God to show me the vision of my life, that creates a more beautiful and solid vision because, again, there are other energies and frequencies working around us. This is why it's so important to call upon Jesus and God and let that be your provider. Let that be your source of healing. Let that be your source of healing,
yeah.
source of abundance, source of delivery, source of everything, so that you are always being given literally from the highest source.
Yeah. I remember, so a story that I have was, so up until last year, I was
Hmm.
living in Hong Kong, and whilst, on the surface, everything looked really great, I was really unhappy living there. I was alone all the time. I had nobody in Hong Kong that I could call and say, "Do you want to get a coffee?" I had nothing like this. And I I then needed this surgery, so I went to get this surgery. It was something removed from my shoulder, and I remember feel like I walked myself to the hospital. There was no one at home when I went home. I felt so alone. And I remember I get home and I felt called to pull like an oracle card.
Hmm.
What was the oracle card that I pulled? It literally said, "You are not alone." And I was like, oh my God. And I felt like something activated within me in that moment. And I felt this connection to something that I couldn't see. And all of a sudden, I felt like I could make that decision to leave, that I
Yeah.
could let go of the things that I perceived were keeping me secure and move into creating a life that I actually wanted to have.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after that, I decided to leave Hong Kong. And what happened from that is, and this is what I'm going to say, is I really feel like this podcast is a God-given podcast. I feel like our friendship is, as I would put it, it is like an answered prayer.
Mhm.
And because I had all of that time that I was feeling so alone, and I was literally, after I left Hong Kong, I went to Bali and I met this huge community of women that have become my really good friends. And then I went to Palm Springs and I met you. And it's like, I was thinking about it today and I was thinking, this is so crazy because it was almost like God gave me a choice.
Yeah.
God was like, this is not feeling good in your body in so many ways because it's no longer meant for you. You're
Yeah.
meant to walk a new path. And so you can either trust yourself to stretch, you can trust that, I've got your back, the universe has got your back, Jesus has got your back, everything has your back, and you can see what is on the other side. But this is sometimes this, it feels sometimes when we are taking those leaps and those leaps of faith,
Yeah.
right? it does feel like a stretch. It does feel scary. And I had a friend ask me recently, she said, weren't you scared? I was like, yeah, I was terrified. I was
Yeah.
terrified. But I knew the alternative was to stay stuck.
Yes.
And I think when it comes to faith, when we're talking about leaning into trust, sometimes as I say it, or as I would explain it, is what's the alternative?
And I think when we are at that point where we have experienced the alternative and we're like, well, the alternative sucks, that's why a rock bottom is actually a very beautiful and sacred place, because you have seen the alternative. When it comes to then having faith in that moment and you get scared, it's almost like, well, I've seen the alternative, so let me try this. I literally have nothing to lose. And it becomes a very sacred moment. And in that moment, you decided to lean into your faith. And I think that's what people get to kind of realize in here. When you lean into faith, the outcome isn't certain yet in a physical form. And so you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to go, but you just walk with this certainty of whatever it is, it's for my greatest and highest good. And God, I trust you. And then you go and then you jump. And then whatever things come up, you see that you can navigate through all of those loops and hurdles that come up. And God is really protecting you and guiding you through that. And that is how the relationship gets built. It's not because you sit and the relationship is built, it's because you take action through your faith, and through the experiences the relationship is built. And through that, you got so much in every single layer that you're like, wow, this just strengthened my relationship with God. So then when the next thing comes and the next thing comes, you're like, no, I trust. I will feel fear, but the fear is not going to stop me. Like, I trust and I lean into it. And I know that I've got this because God's got me. And I really, truly, I think the foundation starts from knowing God is here to give us abundance,
Yes.
not to take anything from
No,
us.
like when you really think about it, when you have taken a leap of faith in your life, you have never fallen. You have always been caught.
Yeah. Even if it felt like you had fallen, you hadn't, because as that journey continues, it leads into the most beautiful things. And sometimes it might take a little while for you to see how you were actually taught and guided. But it's like in that process, don't lose your faith. There's a story that's coming up for me, so I'll share this story. It's about this lady that I knew, and she came to me for sessions. She really wanted to separate from her husband, and so she finally did. And after she did, her life felt a little bit more of like a mess and chaotic, and she was almost regretting that decision, even though she knew it was for her highest good. And like, I think she even tried to get back, and like it wouldn't work and all of that. And so for a few years, and it was a few years for her, like she really was at like a rough place, and she was regretting her decision to jump, to take that leap, but she nonetheless continued to put one foot in front of the other. And then there was just, I don't want to give too many like specific details about her journey, but there was one night where it was really beautifully, it was divine intervention. And with what happened in her life that night, it literally then brought her to God. And it's like everything then made sense to her. And then she started having this beautiful relationship to God, and like her life just like turned around, and then it's like, oh, it all made sense. And so when we take that leap of faith, like don't fight it. Don't go into fear, you guys. Like when you take the leap of faith, then actually have faith, because it's going to want you to practice your faith. And there's something you and I had spoken about, is like when we learn about Jesus, when we learn about everything that he did, Jesus walked with complete trust. The reason why he was able to heal, the reason why he was able to do the things he did, he walked with complete trust. And that's what we talk so much about this new earth. And we've read through the Torah and the Bible that there's a Messiah. And, we learn there's the coming of Christ, and everyone's waiting for this one person to come and be the savior. And I think what more and more and more and more of us are recognizing is that it's the inner God, it's the inner Christ within every single one of us.
Wow.
That's the coming of Christ. That's the new earth.
Wow.
And when we learn about this, it's literally about, because who did Jesus walk with? Jesus walked with God.
Mm.
Jesus embodied God, and Jesus was
Yeah.
showing us how to do that. So, this coming of Christ, this new earth, this Messiah coming, it's actually all of us
Mm.
walking with that faith, walking with that certainty, walking with that trust. It's us that creates this new heaven and this new earth.
Yeah, and it makes me think, because if we sort of look at the kind of world that we live in right now. And I mean that in terms of, at least it's my kind of world. There's a lot of people around me, a lot of people I interact with are very much into self-development. They're
Hmm.
into getting to know themselves. They're into connecting with truly who they are.
Yeah.
And for me, what has sort of an extension of that. I spoke to you about this, that I've had like quite a few people come to me and say, I feel like I want to create a relationship with God,
Yeah.
and this is just like that next step. And, you know, I wonder if, like you say, we're moving into this new earth, all of that, all of this connecting to ourselves, really, dialing in on who we are and our own inner truth and our connection to that,
Hmm.
that has been the preparation for what is coming.
And I think that is also like, absolutely, it's a foundation of this movement towards God and embodying God, is when we look at ourselves and who we truly want to be and what feels best for us and how we feel called to live our lives and experience this world. That really is a calling towards God, because God planted that seed for you. So God's going to be the one
Yeah.
that creates it through you. And
Yeah.
so it requires you. And I think it's so beautiful when I look at the world and I see the literally the marvelous ways God has worked through everyone in order to get their attention. And this is where I see, like, this is where I'm like, I don't see religion, because I'm like, God has just worked through everyone. No matter what religion you are, no matter what you think you believe in, God shows up and God's like, here I am.
Yeah.
Here I am, and here you are, and let's work together.
We spoke about this a few days ago as well, where I was saying, it's almost like, all of the different religions, I always noticed that they kind of had the same core belief, which was to be, treat others as you want to be treated, or be a good person, do good things. And, it's kind of the same when you think of, human design or astrology or channeling. It's from the same source, but it's
It
just in a
really,
different language.
you know what? That is so true, because I look at you, for example, you do human design, and then I look at my girls who do astrology, and then I channel, and then there's Kabbalah, and then I look at all of these things. I look at the information that comes through in all of these things. And then also, like, we, of course, have clients that overlap, and the messages I give them about how they are, and then they come to their human design, and it's like, you give them the exact same message through their human design, and that like solidifies that for them. And it's like, then the thing spirit and source has really given me about just messages that come through in sessions with people, and then I hear like Kabbalah talking about source and how it works, and I was like, I get the same messages. And then you realize, like, it all comes from the same source. It's the
Yeah.
source of God, it's the source of
Mhm.
like the
Mhm.
highest good. And so there is this oneness, there is just one.
Mhm.
And and I think,
And
and when we,
sometimes, like it's like the language that it comes through on. So, someone who's called into human design or someone who's more called into astrology, it's like that language it's speaking their language. So
yeah,
what is communicated to them from source through
yeah.
that is exactly the way that they are going to understand it, and they're going
Mhm.
to feel clear and connected to what that is, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and I think it's so beautiful, and we all just get to surrender and lean into it, and just remember God is here for good. God has already forgiven you, so you get to forgive yourself for anything you feel not good with. Loved
Hmm.
ones, family members, people around you. Learning how to forgive truly sets you free.
Oh, so true. Yeah.
And it's like, as you build that relationship with God, like, you realize forgiveness, and sometimes the people that you're forgiving may continue to act and be exactly how they are, But that's where we remember, like, forgiveness is for your own self. It's for your own soul. It's for your own freedom. Like, that's, I think we see so much chaos in so many aspects of the world that people then lose their faith in their own embodiment of God because they match the frequency of that chaos. And I think it's so important to remember that as this earth is shifting, and we have to remember this is, I think it's an African proverb that says, when the snake's about to die, it hisses the loudest. And whenever anything is about to leave your vessel, I look at it with all like the detoxes I had to do in my body. When that bacteria, that poison, that whatever it was leaving my body, I felt the most sick. I felt the worst that I did. And it's like it gets the loudest as it's leaving. And so many times I see like our world is getting very loud and people are losing faith because it's getting so loud. And I'm like, these are actually, again, the moments where you get to stick to your faith. It's getting loud because this frequency is exiting Earth. Don't lose your faith. Don't lose your love. Just because someone else wants to be separated from God, just because somebody wants to act separated from God, doesn't mean you should too. Doesn't mean you should not forgive or hold grudges or hate someone else and judge someone else and be. If you disagree with something that someone is saying or what they're standing for, and you truly think what they're standing for is wrong, that's fine. Don't hate them. Pray for them.
Yeah.
And I think these are the moments right now in this timeline and where we're deeply at right now is don't hate your neighbor, pray for your neighbor. Don't lose your relationship to God because of what's happening. Understand that this is all under divine coordinates and God always wins. You need to have that faith. God always wins.
Yeah.
And so stay in your faith, stay in your love, stay in this conviction of seeing a beautiful world. I think too many people are convinced that the world is a bad place. And if you're convinced of that, then you're creating that.
Exactly.
Stay in your conviction that this world is a beautiful place. This world
This
is a
is why it's so important to have that connection to faith, to have
because
that connection.
it won't separate you when chaos like this
Mm.
happens.
Yeah.
It'll actually lean you deeper into love. And I think that I spoke about this when like my dad passed and my experience around his passing, and he passed when the war had started in Israel, so I couldn't go see him, I couldn't go bury him. I couldn't be there. And it could have created so much hate and division within me because that's also what the media, the type of propaganda it wants to give you to create more of the separation. It could have done that. But because of my relationship with God, because of my relationship to choose love, it didn't create any separation or any faith or any hate. All it did, it leaned me more towards into love. It leaned me into looking at the people that I disagree with their actions, and instead of hating them, I prayed for them and I pray over them and I continue to. And all that did is expand me and it expanded my energy. And I want people to know, and this is again when we talk about living these things in example, it's not that you don't have these experiences in life that wants to tear you away from love and from truth. We have so many of it, but that's the test, that's the initiation. And when you choose to live literally with the love of God and be a reflection of that, then you have the capability, you have everything within your vessel that's designed to really support you in living in that way and to continue to choose love. And so, in these very chaotic times on earth, I hope everybody knows and recognizes this is this is the beginning of something great and something beautiful. Don't be fooled by what you're seeing. The best thing you can do is just choose to continue to love, continue to heal whatever internal separation that you have, and then you will see it externally in your personal life and for the world.
I love that. And I feel like, as we move deeper into our journey with this podcast, this topic is going to come up again
Yes,
because,
in deeper ways, absolutely. Like
yeah,
you said, this was a God-led uh, relationship, and this podcast was literally God-led. And I think that the more experiences that we also have, and the more we talk
mm,
about here, we're going to just keep churning to God and showing God's reflection in all of this.
yeah. And I mean, we've spoke about how we do have this call to start reading the Bible together,
Yes,
to
yes, we're going to have our own Bible study.
Yeah, we're going to deepen our own relationship to God. And this is something we're actively doing. You know, we're
Yeah,
not sharing this podcast as we're on the other side. We're like, we're
yeah,
actively in this trust and this faith with God. And
yeah,
we want to take you guys along with us as
yeah.
well.
Who
And
knows? Maybe one of our like offerings becomes literally like a Bible study
yeah,
with a huge collective that's called to it after we of course go through the journey ourselves. But I'm very excited for
I'm
our
excited.
journey with God, and of course we're excited to share it with everyone also.
Yeah. But thank you guys so much
Yeah.
for listening to this really beautiful episode. We were both really excited to record this
Hmm.
one, and it really landed as this download of you need to talk about God.
Yeah,
So I feel really sort of privileged and grateful
definitely.
for this space for us between us and what we're creating. And so yeah, I'm just sending everybody who's listening love, prayers, all of the abundance.
Yes, and we pray that this episode not only planted a few seeds for you guys, but allowed some of those seeds that God had already planted for you guys to blossom a little bit
Oh,
and open
that
up
gave
a
me
little bit.
chills. Yeah,
Yes. And let's live in this beautiful world that we do have, and let's experience life in such a beautiful, beautiful way.
I love that. See you guys next time on Spiritually Unfiltered. Bye.
Love you all.